Anyway, I'm kind of torn on that show. I both love it and hate it at the same time. Hate's a strong word. Will I watch the next season? Well, yes. Hey, what's up you guys, it's me Luke and welcome back to another video, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel and happy new year. It is my first video of 2024. I don't know, what are we saying? It sounds kind of weird. Either way, so about a week ago I uploaded a video where I rated, ranked and reviewed a couple of films that I watched that came out in 2023, and today's video is going to be about the TV shows that I watched that came out in 2023 or aired a new season in 2023. I'm not going to be really spoiling these shows too much, at least not major spoilers. I mean, some of these shows are like seasons in, so like there might be minor ones, but I think you'll be safe. Trust me, I hate spoilers too. And also there are timestamps in the description below if you only want to hear me talk about a specific show. But hopefully you get to hear my thoughts on shows that you've watched, whether positive or negative, or you get an idea of something else to watch. I also uploaded a companion video over on my Patreon where I discussed the shows that didn't come out in 2023 that I watched for the first time or I rewatched. If you want to check that out, go ahead and check out my Patreon. It starts at just $2.50 USD a month. And without further ado, let's get into this video because I'm really excited to discuss these TV shows with you guys. So we're starting off with Ginny and Georgia. So Ginny and Georgia is a Netflix original. The second season came out in January of 2023. So before I discuss season 2, basically the premise of this show is we have our angsty 15-year-old Ginny Miller who feels a lot more mature than her 30-year-old mother, Georgia Miller, who had her when she was her age, when she was 15. So it's kind of very similar vibes, I would say, to Gilmore Girls. Like, not very similar, but it's got that dynamic of like the single mother and her teenage daughter, and she had her when she was a teenager, and like there's like family involved and like pressures of society and stuff, because basically the premise is that Georgia is constantly moving her and her kids to different towns in the US. In fact, her two children, Jenny and Austin, are both named after the towns they were born or conceived in. So you got Jenny, which is for Virginia, and then we got Austin for like Austin, Texas. So yeah, that's really kind of a fun antidote. So we're introduced to the show where the mother, Georgia, is yet again going on the run because she's gotten herself into a bit of a mess, and she takes her children with her and moves to New England to start a new life. However, while she's trying to build roots in this town, there is a private investigator who is kind of hunting her down because Georgia has been involved in certain crimes that he is yet to be able to prove, and he's been hired by her late husband's ex-wife because she believes that she had something to do with his death so that she could get money from his will, which is how she has the money to get a house and move to New England. So there's an undertone of criminal activity throughout the show, and it very much reminds me of like Desperate Housewives in the sense where you have, you know, like a mom and their life seems so perfect from the outside and they put on this facade, but behind closed doors there's actually some sinister behavior going on. So that's something I really enjoyed about Georgia's character, is that she has this facade to everyone else because she's trying to create a new life for herself, and she's always been on the run, and she's a survivor, and she's been through such a traumatic past that she puts up all these walls and she behaves in a way that makes it seem like everything's perfect when it's not, so that when she does have an emotional breakdown, it's really intense and it's really eye-opening to what it's like for someone out there who has to behave in a different way due to a trauma response. I find Georgia's character, the mother, really entertaining, and there's also a lot of flashbacks in the show to when Georgia was a teen mother, when she fell pregnant with Ginny, and Ginny's kind of like absent father, and the cycle of abuse that she was stuck in with all the different relationships she was in after she ran away from home. And the actress who played young Georgia also did an amazing job, and she looks so much like her. It was such great casting, and I really did enjoy the flashbacks in the show because they were kind of dribbled here and there, and it didn't feel like overkill, and it really helped you understand why Georgia's been on the run and why she is the way that she is. And I love Georgia's accent. She's got that southern accent, and she's got such a charm about her and such a wit, and she just has such a good mask. I love a character who acts a certain way to certain people, and then when she's alone is vulnerable, and you can see that. Like, the dynamics within her character are just so vast, and I think that she's such an entertaining watch, and you really never know what she's going to do next. She's constantly surprising me, and I love that about her. I don't really have anything negative to say about Georgia because even when it comes to some of her parenting choices that I like disagree with and I think are kind of toxic, I do think that it doesn't ever come from a malicious place, and she's always trying to do the best to protect her children and give them the best life. And also, she became a mother when she was 15, and now she's 30 years old raising a teenager, and because of her past, she's only doing her best to raise her own children. So of course she's going to make mistakes, and she's also a single mother with two deadbeat dads who don't really help that much, one of which is in prison, might I add. But that's what I want to say about Georgia for now. Getting into Ginny's character. So Ginny is like an angsty teenager, as most are, and she's she's fed up having to move around and start at new schools and make new friends all the time. And this is like the first time when she feels like she's actually making roots and she's making friends at this new school. And she's got quite a eclectic group of friends, I would say. Like their personalities really do vary. It's not so much like the typical high school TV show characters. I feel like the friends she's with are like supposed to be popular, but they're also kind of like really dorky and awkward. I will say some of the Gen Z writing in the show is really awkward. It's like when you can tell a middle-aged person is trying to write Gen Z dialogue. It's just too on the nose and too pulled from TikTok and shoved into the character's voice that it doesn't really sound supernatural. I meant super natural, two different words. There's no supernatural stuff going on in this show. And also I will say that like her best friend Max is a lesbian, and it's great representation because she doesn't have a coming out story and no one's like being homophobic towards her. It's just that she's a lesbian and everyone accepts it and it's chill, and she talks about like dating girls and stuff and it's accepted, and that's great. But they do kind of make that like a huge part of her personality. Like most of the show she's just like trying to get a girlfriend. And then she also has her twin brother Marcus, who's like really angsty. You kind of find out he has depression and that's part of it, and he's kind of like that bad boy next door. They're like next door neighbors, so you know he'll crawl into her window and stuff, which is kind of creepy. But it's kind of like that classic neighbors to enemies to lovers trope, and it is really entertaining. And Ginny herself also struggles with self-harm, and I thought that was actually handled really well. Often in shows it's not really a topic that I think is handled well, but in this show, you know, her father takes her to therapy, and at first her mother doesn't handle it well, but then she goes to therapy with Ginny and she's able to understand how to talk to her about it, and they can connect, because that is also a really big part of this show is Ginny and Georgia's relationship. It's definitely like the main focus, and you see a lot of parallels in their lives where Ginny is criticizing her mom for her behavior, but then she will exhibit some of that same behavior and isn't really fully self-aware of it until later on, and vice versa with Georgia seeing a lot of herself in Ginny and finding that frustrating, but remembering that that's what she was like too. And I find that dynamic really interesting. I really enjoy the mother-daughter relationship in this show. I think it's handled in a really interesting, nuanced way. I really enjoy that, and I will say at times I do feel like Ginny gives her mother such a difficult time. I can understand why, because there is kind of like this barrier of connection between them, because Ginny is biracial. She's got a black father and a white mother, and I think Georgia doesn't fully understand what that is like for Ginny and how she feels othered, and she tries to understand later on, but in the beginning she's very much like, you're beautiful, I don't see you in a different way because of this. But Ginny's trying to explain to her like, yes, but other people do and I am different. And like Ginny tries to step away from her white friends and make some black friends so she can feel part of her culture, and you get to see how some of the white teachers treat her in a different way because she is biracial, and then you get to see how she interacts with her black father and their family. And I thought, you know, from what I can say, because obviously I'm white, I don't understand it fully and I can't speak to it too much, but I thought that the way they handled it was interesting. And if any of you are biracial and you watch the show, definitely comment down below how you felt about it, because I definitely felt that it was handled in a pretty delicate way. And the show also handles all of these topics of race and gender and age and self-harm and depression and cheating and all these different things in a way that does not feel so forced and woke and shoved down your throat. And I think there is a line, there's a balance between, you know, educating and representation and entertainment, and I think the show definitely strikes a balance with it. And when it comes to the plot of the show, it is very interesting. I will say that I do tend to enjoy Georgia's scenes a lot more than Ginny's, because Georgia's stuff is a lot more complex. It's stuff to do with, like, you know, like I said, her criminal behavior, her past, her relationships with her baby daddies, her cycle of abuse from her past, the way she puts on this facade with the different people in town. She starts to get romantically involved with different people, one of which being the mayor, and that relationship was really interesting. So there's a lot that goes on with Georgia that I thoroughly entertained with. I'm never really bored when she's on screen. But when it comes to Ginny, I think there are a lot of scenes for me that just don't quite click, and it's because she is so young. You know, she's 15. I don't know if she's 16 in season 2, but a lot of her storylines and her scenes do focus on high school stuff. You know, it focuses on friends and bullies and teachers and relationships and all this kind of stuff. And I'm, you know, about to turn 24, so I'm kind of out of it when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I do think it's a really good show if you were to like watch it with your child. I don't know, if you like have a teenager and you're a parent, you kind of both get something from the show. Either way, I found it still pretty entertaining. The only things about her storylines that really bothered me was just the frustration that I felt in the things that they were saying. There's a very popular clip of her and her first boyfriend in season 1 named Hunter having a bit of a race debate or war, because he's half Asian and half white and she's half black and half white, and they have this like oppression Olympics argument that is very difficult and tone deaf and weird to watch, and I've seen a lot of people who are POC online feel the same way, so I know I'm not like alone in that. It was very strangely written, some offensive things were said, some stereotypes were said, and it was a nasty scene. And Hunter as a whole in season 1 was a lot of the reason I think many people probably didn't want to watch the show or keep going with it, because he was an extremely cringy character doing musical numbers, tap dancing, all this really weird stuff that was just painful to watch. And don't even get me started on his hair in season 1. I don't want to talk about it. It's traumatic for me to live through. So season 1 was rough, and by the end of it I wasn't sure if I was going to keep going, but because of Georgia I did, and I'm so glad that I did, because season 2 was a lot better than season 1. It really kind of softened some of those cringy storylines, and you got to learn more about the other characters in their lives, because that's another aspect towards this, is there is a lot of characters in this show. There's a lot of high school students who have their separate issues, whether that be, you know, body dysmorphia, eating disorders, self-harm, depression, all these different kind of things. There's a lot going on, and I feel like there were times throughout the show, especially in season 1, where they were alluding to certain things but not developing it and discussing it, and it felt like, why even show that if you're not going to really explore it? They're really kind of going for the long haul, because there are only 10 episodes per season, that they're slowly with these side characters starting to unveil more about their issues, and I really appreciated that. And I thought that the show struck a really good balance of like being comedic but also being serious, and the flashbacks were great. And really, I'm saying a lot of positive things because that is how I feel, but really my only critiques of the show is some of the cringy acting from the high school students, more specifically Jenny's best friend Max and her first boyfriend Hunter. They're the ones I really struggle with, but you know, besides that, I think it's a really enjoyable watch, so I recommend you guys check it out. Wow, I feel like I spoke a lot about that show, and I watched that so long ago, I don't remember having that much to say. But anyway, let's talk about Outer Banks season 3. I also probably am gonna have a lot to say about this show, maybe a little bit less, because you know, it was the 3rd season, it came out in February of this year. I'm gonna talk a little bit about when I first started watching the show, because this show for me was slow to get into, and I was kind of confused what the point or the premise of it was. So let me explain it a little bit. So the show follows a group of Pogue teenagers who, I'll explain that term in a little bit, who live in the Cut, which is an area in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where there's like a stark social divide between these two groups called the Pogues, which are the working class, you know, kind of like the poorer people try to work themselves up in the ladder, and then the Kooks, who are like the really wealthy, rich people who are very snobby, and there's like a social divide between them, and that does come to play a lot within the show, and it is very interesting. It kind of almost has that, not that like, you know, Montague, Cabernet, what's the other name in Romeo and Juliet? There's like the Montagues and the something, I don't know, like that, like the two warring families, but it's like two warring social classes, and I found that to be very interesting. The show starts and we have this group of friends, John B, Kira, Hope, and JJ. So there's like a group of 4, and John B's father has gone missing and presumed to be dead, and his father was a huge treasure hunter. I know it sounds kind of silly, stick with me. You know, they live near the water, and a lot of people work on the water with different things, and a lot of the show is set around the water. It feels like a little island vacation, and it kind of like evolves because John B gets involved with this girl named Sarah Cameron, who is a kook, because this group of friends are Poe. This sounds so dumb coming out of my mouth. But yeah, he gets involved with her, and he has a rivalry with her father and her brother, and there's like a lot of kooks and Pogues fighting, and then people all start getting involved, and people are all looking for this long lost treasure. How do I even explain this show? Because when I was watching it, I felt the way I'm feeling about it now by saying it. I felt like, why am I watching a bunch of teenagers treasure hunt? Like, what's the point of this? But it's just an adventure show. These teenagers are just like running amok, running around this town. Like, there's all these bad guys, like these villains. There's all these people hunting after this long lost treasure. And this 3-season arc, and the stakes just keep building and building to degrees you can't even imagine. There are pirates involved. They're jumping aboard of ships, and they're hiding in the ships, and there's people getting into fights, throwing people overboard, people trying to kill people, boats blowing up, people presumed to be dead, but then they're not dead, people getting stranded on islands. Like, there is so much going on, and it is such a buttload of fun. And even though it was slow to get into for season 1, I just kept enjoying the show more and more. And I have heard a lot of critiques from people about season 3 where people didn't enjoy it that much, but for me, season 3 was actually my favorite. I had a lot of fun with this season. I thought that it really amped up the stakes and the action and the adventure of it, that I just kept binging it and I didn't want it to end. And it's 10 episodes per season, so unfortunately it did end kind of quick. There's also a 5th member added to the group. Well, I guess Sarah's the 5th member, so there's a 6th member added to the group, and her name is Cleo, and I really like her as well. They meet her along their adventure. So there's a group of 6 of them. There's 3 girls and 3 guys. One thing I will say is that I don't really like how they pair them all off with each other. I feel like it's a little bit unrealistic. I mean, it could have been realistic if they developed it more, but I just feel like it's like a classic trope where you have like a big group of friends and then everyone just gets paired off with each other. Also, there's kind of like no LGBTQ characters in this show. I don't remember. Everyone's just straight, so that kind of sucks to, but you know, whatever. I can look past that. You know, it's not going to be in every show. I'm not that interested in the relationship aspect of the show. Like I said, there's a lot of people getting kidnapped, people getting rescued, people getting lost. Like, it's all very high stakes. It just keeps building on top of each other, and I thought that the show wrapped up in a really great way. So that's why I said it's like a season 1 to season 3 arc, because the show kind of ended in a way towards the end of season 3, and then it had a time jump. So clearly there's going to be another season, but it's going to be a different story. So I feel like this would be a really good show to watch, because you could just watch these 3 seasons and decide to be done, because I really enjoyed them, and I'm gonna watch season 4, but if I don't enjoy whatever new adventure they're on, I'm probably not gonna watch it, because I just feel like the magic that they created in the show feels difficult to replicate. Now, if I'm going to talk about any of my critiques with this show, I would say that in season 3, I didn't personally notice this, but once I saw people pointing it out, I could not notice it. There was some shoddy editing. There was some stunt doubles that weren't cut out properly. There was some weird sound effects and just editing choices that were a bit jarring. And now that people pointed them out, I can't not notice it. The other thing is, I don't really think of this as a spoiler, because it's like a huge marketing thing that they did called Pogelandia, and like the premise of season 3, and it was very out there. But they get stranded on this island towards the end of season 2, and we had to wait a whole year to see what would happen. And then they get off of the island in like 1 episode. Like, yes, there's an amazing adventure that starts after that, but I kind of was hoping that there was more going on with that. I wish it took them a couple more episodes to get off that island, because especially if they were on the island longer, we could have seen their relationships develop more, and then it would make sense why they all got paired off together, as opposed to like just having to imagine that it happened off screen. They could have even done flashbacks, you know, that would have been good too. But besides that, that's kind of the only critiques that I have, because this show to me is just good old fun. I really love an adventure show, and I don't feel like there's that many of them. I mean, Stranger Things is kind of like an adventure show, but the reason I like this show more is because, I mean, 1, it's older characters, and 2, it's so fast paced. Like, you're just always on the go, and I was a big fan of adventure movies when I was younger. So this is just my adventure show as a teen, and I highly recommend you guys check it out if you haven't. Next up, we have You season 4 that aired from February to March of 2023, because it was split up into 2 parts. Once again, this show is on its 4th season, so it's kind of difficult to talk about it without spoiling it. But basically, the general premise of this show, which is a very popular show, you probably already heard about it. I actually read the book for this show way before the show was ever a thing. That when it first became a thing, I was like, oh my god, that's based on the book that I read. So I watched the 1st season, and the show didn't make much noise for its 1st season. It was really the 2nd season onwards where it became super duper popular. But the premise of the show is this character named Joe Goldberg, played by Penn Badgley, famously from Gossip Girl, who is a stalker. He's got a lot of issues. He's got an abusive childhood past and stuff, and as an adult, he can't help himself, but when he gets a crush, for lack of a better word, on a woman, he gets infatuated with her and starts stalking her and infiltrating her life and those around her, and nothing can stop him or get in his way, including people. This man has and will and does kill. Oh my god, that actually sounded really good. It's just really interesting because the character of Joe is so charismatic, and he is the narrator of the show. There's a lot of voiceovers throughout the show because the book is written in 2nd person. So instead of saying I did this or they did this, it's always you do this, you walk over there, and you brush your hair, and you do this. I can't stop thinking about you. It's very you. That's why the show's called You. Duh. So you hear a lot of his internal dialogue, and it's so creepy, yet when you see him interacting with whatever woman it is, it's just such an interesting watch, because you don't know whether or not to find him charming or creepy or attractive or disgusting. Like, it's such a mix of emotions, and people are attracted to this character, and he's a psycho. So anyway, that's like the general premise of the show. And the way that the show was starting off was like, you know, season 1, infatuated with one girl, that relationship ends. Maybe it was death, maybe it was breakup, who knows. Season 2, same thing happens again. But then season 3, they shifted gears because he stayed with the character that he was infatuated with in season 2, and turns out she was darker as well, and she was played by, what was her name? Victoria Pedri. She is such an amazing actress. I'm kind of sad she's no longer on the show. And you get to see how everything that was built on in the previous season comes with him, because he's always like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. But he has an addiction, he has a problem. But season 4 really took a completely different spin on this, because season 1 he was living in New York, and then season 2 he moved to LA, started a new life, and he did that for season 2 and season 3. Season 4 he moved to not just a whole new city, not just a whole new country, but a whole new continent. He first goes to Paris, and then he moves to London, and he wants to start a new life. He changes his name, his his identity, also because of some crimes that he committed in America. And it's really interesting to see him try and build a life for himself and start fresh and be healthier, and see him start to fall into those similar patterns and start to try and fight them off. He also gets involved with a elite social group because he is working at a university in London as a professor. I don't remember what university it is, but some hoity-toity one. And he gets involved with these rich socialites, and you get introduced to such a rich cast of characters, a much bigger cast than the previous seasons. And there's all these dynamics that go on between them, and I really enjoy snobby, bitchy, rich characters who don't always realize when they're being rude. There's something about it that's so entertaining to me. I recently talked about Saltburn in my last video. It's a thing that I really enjoy watching. But yeah, the characters I actually found pretty interesting. Not all of them. I mean, there's so many of them. I'm not going to find all of them interesting. And when I first started watching the show, season 4, it was a little difficult to like grasp everyone's storyline. But yeah, the premise of season 4 is he goes there to London to start a fresh life, but then he starts getting stalked. Someone starts texting him and sending him pictures of himself and stalking him and talking about how they know what he did and they're going to expose him. So he's trying to figure out who this person is. So he's constantly on edge, watching all these different people trying to figure out who it is. And then you get a plot twist halfway through the season that I will admit I was extremely shocked by. And it's kind of hard to shock me these days. I've watched so much movies and TV shows. There's so many tropes out there. It's hard to always have an original idea, that I was shocked. But then when it was explained, I was not too much of a fan of it. Okay, I just don't always love the whole mental health explaining a plot twist. And what is with so many characters in movies and TV shows these days having such vivid hallucinations? I don't quite understand that. But anyway, the love interest for this season was my least favorite overall throughout all the seasons. Her name was Kate Galvin, played by Charlotte Ritchie. I did kind of like how for majority of the season, especially the first half, she was not falling for Joe's shit. Like, she saw through him in a way. Like, she kind of found him creepy and like she wasn't really interested. They had a lot of banter, and then they kind of have that slow burn. They start to like get involved in stuff, and turns out she's a little sinister too. So I think that's probably the path they're going down. And what they've been doing with the latter seasons is they've been having like his main girl turning out to be a bit cuckoo as well, like him, and then he has like a side girl who is a bit more innocent and chill that he had been stalking over the last 2 seasons. So it's getting more complicated as time goes on, and I'm always very interested when a new season of the show comes out to see what they're going to do next. By the end of the season, it seems like to me they're setting up for the last season to be the final season of the show. It's very much giving full circle. So I'm very interested to see how they close it up, because these days I think shows are understanding that it's better to end things on a high than to drag a show out just to make money. One thing, if I had any critique with season 4 besides the whole plot twist that I thought was a little cheap, is I found, how can I explain this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm just being gross? So a lot of the first couple seasons of the show had to do with Joe's relationships with women, right? So with that, there is intimacy, there are sex scenes, love, nudity, passion, whatever. That was a big part of it, you know? And he is kind of sexually creepy as well, I guess you could say. I don't know. Like, he's infatuated with these women in many different ways, okay? So the actor Penn Badgley has decided that he no longer wants to do intimacy scenes as an actor in respect to his wife. So when I heard that and read that and it was a big deal, I was like, oh, okay, so I guess he got married. She's not comfortable with it. That kind of sucks. You know, it's a job. He's acting. Many actors do it, but okay. And then I found out that he was married to this woman long before this show started. So I'm kind of surprised that all of a sudden that's changing. But then again, I don't know what goes on in their personal lives and relationships, but you could definitely feel it in the show, because he wouldn't even kiss the other actress. They showed the kissing in a way where it's like, it was implying that they were kissing, but you couldn't probably see it. And the sex scenes felt stale. Like, I felt like the passion and the intimacy with his character was taken away from this show. And not that I'm wanting it to get titillated, because I never did, but it feels like it changes the tone, and it feels like it takes away from an aspect of this show, because, you know, sex is an integral part of life, and it was an integral part of the show, and it can be a good plot device, and it can add suspense and tension and mystery, and it can be done in a way that adds to the story, and that's what they always did. But the way that they've completely done a 180, in my opinion, has detracted. And then it felt like they were trying to up the ante because they didn't have that by showing more gruesome things. Like, there's this scene in the first episode of season 4 where he's literally removing a character's body parts, and then also to make up for the lack of intimacy, there's just like random flashes of nudity of characters that we didn't need to see. I think the intimacy, nudity aspect of this show, the gruesomeness, whatever, was not handled well this season. But in general, I did enjoy it, and I will definitely be watching season 5, and I do hope it's the last season. Okay, so moving on to a show I'm not sure if many of you have heard about or watched, but I'm excited to possibly introduce you to, is called Class of '07. It is an Amazon Prime Video original. It is an Australian TV show. Australia represents. 100%. I loved the show. I watched it once by myself and then I wanted to rewatch it again, so I made my younger sister watch it with me. But yeah, so the premise of the show is basically there is a high school reunion for these women who are now 27. But just while this reunion is starting at the high school, which by the way is high up on a hill in Sydney, this is important for later, our main character Zoe is not going to go because she embarrassed herself on live television when she was on like some sort of bachelor show. So she's been hibernating in a caravan out in like the woods, right? And she was not going to go to this. She's been a hermit because she's embarrassed. And then she starts to see that the earth is starting to crumble and fall apart, and she freaks out and she drives all the way to this high school reunion that she wasn't going to come to. And all these girls, these women now are like talking to each other, reminiscing, bantering. You get to see their high school sides come through as adults, and they're not listening to her when she's trying to tell them that there's something going on outside. There's like a flood, the ground's breaking, an earthquake, and they're not listening to her. And then eventually when they hear a noise or something cracks or something happens, they go out and they see that there has been an apocalypse, for lack of a better word. The entire city of Sydney, besides them because they're on one of the highest points, is covered in seawater. Now they are trapped on this bit of land in their high school boarding school. And all the other women are mad at Zoe because they're like, why didn't you tell us? And she's like, I literally did, you wouldn't listen to me. And you get all these dynamics of these women who went to high school together having to now interact with each other because they're trapped in this boarding school. They're trying to do the basic survival things, obviously, like trying to send for help, trying to get food, trying to organize ways of having electricity and water. And it's such a great show because it's so funny, but it's also so realistic. I say this all the time to my younger sister when I'm watching stuff with her or anyone, where I hate survival shows where they really don't show you the nitty gritty. Like, I want to know, where do you go to the bathroom? How do you bathe yourself? Like, do you pleasure yourself? Like, I want to know the details because I find it so fascinating. So in this show, you get to see them, you know, digging long drops or searching for toilets or like talking about if they pleasure themselves or like trying to find alcohol. Like, just you get to see all that different stuff, and it spans over a while that they're trapped there, and you start to see how some of them are like losing hope, and one of them has to like come up and be the leader. Her name is Saskia. She was my favorite character, and I just really enjoyed how you get to see the flashbacks of the show to when they're in high school and how these issues are now being presented to them when they're stuck with each other. I love the show so much. I really hope it gets to season 2. It is so incredibly entertaining and well done. Please just go into it. Watch the show. I thoroughly think you will enjoy it. I don't know why anyone wouldn't enjoy this show. You don't even have to be Australian to enjoy it. It's not that type of show. But just trust me, it is such a groundbreaking show in my opinion. Like, maybe I haven't watched enough. Maybe there's something out there like this, but to me, this just felt so fresh and entertaining and innovative. And it's one of my favorite stranded / lost / survival type of shows or movies that I've ever watched, because it balances the drama and the reality and the comedy of it so well. And I love a TV show or a movie that can balance those different genres because it's not always easy to do. The fact that you can make me almost cry, but then you can also make me laugh out loud and you can make me feel on the edge of my seat, it's giving what it needs to give. So check it out. Next up, let's talk about Netflix's Beef. Came out in April of 2023. It is a 10-episode show that blew me out of the water. Speaking about a unique show, speaking about taking a concept and just expanding onto it. So you have probably heard about this show because it was like the top show on Netflix when it came out, but it is another comedy drama that's definitely like my favorite genre. And it starts with these characters named Danny and Amy who are involved in a road rage incident that they both take way too far. They're both having really shitty days in different ways. They're both in different social economical classes. You know, Amy is a lot more wealthy. She's an entrepreneur, but she's not feeling fulfilled in her marriage or her business or her life. And Danny is struggling financially and he's not feeling fulfilled in his life either. So they're both struggling for different reasons, but obviously when you compare their issues, it's kind of difficult. It's like comparing apples to oranges, but they're having a horrible day. They get involved in a road rage incident with each other and it goes completely out of hand. And that's where the show kind of spirals. And they both are so hyper fixated on finding each other that when they do, they both just start tormenting each other's lives. And it is so interesting to see how they both have reached this breaking point in life where like this is what keeps them going. This beef, this feud with each other is what keeps them going in their lives that they're so miserable in. And it's so interesting to see how the characters around them react to it and how the characters get involved. Like his brother Paul gets involved with Amy, and then we have her husband George who gets involved with Danny, and they're all keeping secrets with each other. And the show just keeps upping the stakes to the point where you get to the finale, like the last 2 episodes especially. Oh my god, were so interesting and entertaining. Like the show just goes in so many places that you don't expect it to, and they manage to fit so much in to these 10 episodes. The pacing is phenomenal. It's the exact type of pacing that I want from a show when I'm looking for a fast-paced show. There was never a moment where it dragged. I was constantly entertained. I didn't know what to expect next. And the themes that the show covers about life sometimes getting you down and you giving into a distraction that's not healthy, but it's what keeps you going, and your behavior can seem irrational, and how humans, when they're at their breaking point, have a short fuse and things can just set them off. And I just thought that the dynamic between these two characters was so interesting because they hate each other, yet at the same time they need each other. And the cinematography, the humor, the side characters, the storylines, I literally can't fault this show. The only thing I can fault about it is I wish that it was longer, and I really hope that there's more of it in the next season, because I did hear that it's going to be an anthology, but this was one of the most refreshing shows I watched in recent times, and I don't see why anyone else wouldn't enjoy it either. A lot of these shows I'm talking about are really positive. So let's get into a negative one. Next up, we have The Idol that came out in June and July of 2023. I actually made a video about this TV show. It's an hour long. I was supposed to make a part 2 to this video and I just couldn't bring myself to do so. So I still have some things to say, but you can check that video out in the link in the description if you want to. It's a full video essay. Pretty proud of that video, but afterwards I couldn't go on because that is how much I hate this show. Alrighty guys, getting into The Idol. HBO Max's 5-episode limited series starring Lily Ray Depp and Abel Tesfaye, aka The Weeknd, created and written by Abel Tesfaye, aka The Weeknd, and Sam Levinson, the creator of Euphoria. You guys have probably heard so much about the show, whether or not you have or haven't watched it. You probably learned a lot of information about it against your will, because this show was everywhere around June, July. It was so poppin', but for like the worst. Did I just say poppin'? It was so popular, but for like the worst reasons. Now, like I said, I already made a YouTube video you can check out, and I actually scripted all 5 episodes, planning to make a part 1 and a part 2. The first video, which I actually did make, being about how the show in the first 2 episodes depicts the life of a female pop star, and some of the influences it possibly took from Britney Spears, Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, those kind of artists, and how that was connected to The Weeknd, and also how Sam Levinson treats his female lead actresses like he has done on Euphoria with Sydney Sweeney, and all the drama that happened behind the scenes of the show, because the show was supposed to be a completely different thing, and there was just a lot that I discussed. And then in the final 3 episodes that I scripted for my part 2 video that I didn't end up making, I wanted to discuss the plot of the show in terms of The Weeknd's cult, and how they had that weak plot twist at the end, and how it seems like the show ended too early because of the backlash, and like just how much of a mess it was. But I, like I said, didn't get around to making that video because honestly, by the time I finished my first video, I was so fed up with this show. Like I said, it's about a struggling pop star who has a psychotic break after her mother dies from cancer, her mother who was actually abusive towards her, and then a year later she's trying to get ready for a new album, a new tour, but she's feeling uninspired by her work, and she meets this owner of a club named Tedros, and her name is Jocelyn, Tedros, who is played by The Weeknd, and he starts getting involved in her life and helping her produce her music and helping her feel inspired, but it's very clear that he has a lot of ulterior motives, and he's very nefarious, and he has a cult of these people who are like, what's the word? Like, I don't know, like he tortures them to make them like perform better, and he's got really twisted ways of thinking about how to get a real performance, and he starts to do that towards Jocelyn. And there's a lot of dark stuff that happens in this show, and also a ton of over-sexualization of Lily Rose Depp. She is nude throughout so much of the show, and when she's not, she's wearing clothes that reveal a lot of her body. There are sex scenes that were way too graphic and did not need to be involved. The plot was a mess. Most of the show took place in The Weeknd's house where it was filmed. It felt very disjointed. It was just like, why did this even have to be a thing? Like, what message did the show send? It wasn't entertaining. It didn't do anything to aid in female empowerment or perspectives of a female pop star. It felt like the dark, twisted dream that The Weeknd and Sam Levinson had and brought to life. And I'm so glad that it was short-lived, and I really hope it doesn't get a second season. I really don't think it will, but I'm just shocked that HBO is just giving Sam Levinson the reins to make hot garbage like this show that honestly is trying to distract you by its visual appeal, with its aesthetics or its sexual nature, when reality, if you take that away, the show doesn't make sense. The ending of it does not tie things up, and the motivations of the character are not wrapped up in just a little plot twist that doesn't really make sense. That's another thing. The plot twist of the show is something that people are taking from one very short clip that you're just supposed to infer and make it seem like it all makes sense. And by the end of it, I was just like, what did I even watch? I felt like I wasted my time. By now, I've suppressed so many memories of the show because it was just so awful. But one thing I will say about the show is the side actors, like Jocelyn's managers, played by Divine Joy Randolph and Hank Azaria, were really entertaining and funny to watch. Of course, we had Rachel Sennett as her assistant / best friend Leah. She was really great. And we also had Eli Roth as her, like, the manager of, like, Live Nation, the touring company. So the side characters are what kept me watching the show. I found them to be very entertaining, but it's really difficult to enjoy a show like this when your lead characters are so insufferable and unlikable, and I did not feel empathy for either either of them. So it's a garbage show, and if you haven't watched it, don't waste your time. And I just feel like there's a lot riding on Sam Levinson now. Like, I really am anticipating Euphoria season 3, like so many of us, because I want to see if he can really turn things around, because I feel like people are starting to get sick of him. I can feel it coming on. Anyway, moving on. So next up we have Abbott Elementary. I mean, I don't have too much to say about the show because it is just like a sitcom comedy type of show. You know, it's not really like a overarching storyline per se. I mean, there's a few, but it's like just something happens in the episode and you just enjoy it. It's comedy, it's fun, it's not that serious. It's just about these teachers who work at a underfunded, underprivileged elementary school, and you know, they all have different quirky personalities, and they're trying to, well, some of them at least, improve the school for the kids. And I just think this show's a fun, wholesome, enjoyable watch. I find the characters really likable. I find a lot of them are really funny in different ways. Like, the principal's really sassy. The main teacher is really innocent and like wholesome and like, what's the word? Naive, or like she misses things easily. Gullible, I think's the word. And then you've got like the nerdy gay guy who's just trying to like fit in. You got like the sassy Italian lady. You got the older, wiser, very prim and proper teacher. And then you got like the guy who's like the love interest. And I just think it's a fun show where you get to follow the lives of these teachers and all the stuff they get into within the school with the kids. I will say it's both refreshing watching a show about teachers where the students are really young, yet also, in my opinion, limiting. I feel like if the show was like a show about teachers in a high school, that would be so interesting and different, because I feel like most shows about high school, if not all of them, center around the students and not the teachers. Now, obviously, you have a few exceptions to that, like Glee, where you focus on the students, but you also do focus on a couple of the teachers. But how funny would it be to have a comedy show like this, but about teachers set in a high school? You could make it a dramedy. You could have drama aspects and the comedy aspects, because there is funny stuff that would happen and also serious stuff. Whereas with this stuff, it feels like they can't really take the humor to that point that I typically enjoy, because their students are children. But I do still think it's an enjoyable show, and I think it's just a nice thing to have on if you just want something chill and relaxing and lighthearted. So yeah, it aired its second season this year, and I really hope they get a third. Next up, we have The Summer I Turned Pretty season 2. I also watched season 1 for the first time this year, but season 2 ended this year and I watched that. And I was not really interested in watching this show when I was seeing the trailers last year. Or was it the year before that season 1 come out? I don't know. But then when I was seeing them recently, there was so much new Taylor Swift re-recorded music in there, and I'm a huge Swiftie. Yeah, I don't know. I just was like, Taylor's music isn't usually in stuff. Like, she must really like the show if she's letting them use her music and like giving them the rights and stuff. So I wanted to check it out. But the reason I wasn't really interested in watching it is because it's a love triangle between a girl and two brothers. And like, the only time I can tolerate that is The Vampire Diaries. Otherwise, I actually find it really disturbing and cringy and gross in a way, almost like borderline incestuous. Like, in what way are you torn between two brothers? And how are the two brothers okay with you being torn between the two of them? Like, in general, it's weird. You know, it's weird. This is okay because it's supernatural, century-old vampires. In this aspect, I find it weird. But the premise of the show is it's based on a book series. Belly, who starts the show being 15 years old, she goes with her family every summer to their family friend's house in this fictional town of Cousins near some Bay Area in America. It's giving East Coast vibes. Yeah, they go there every summer, and they've grown up with these two brothers who are also best friends with her brother. And then, you know, as she comes back for the new summer, she's like gone through puberty and she's blossomed, and everyone's like, oh my god, you're so beautiful. And she has always had a crush on the one brother, Conrad, and always been more friends with the other brother, Jeremiah. But then when she goes to summer, Conrad's like in a really depressed mood and she doesn't know why, and she's like trying to figure it out. And then you also get Jeremiah, who is kind of, at first you're like, is he interested in her, is he not? Jeremiah's bisexual, that I enjoy, although he only has a thing with a guy once in one episode, so I would kind of like that to be shown a little bit more. But then Billy gets involved with this other guy that she meets called Cameron. She's getting involved with a lot of guys. My sister was always calling her a hoe. And it's not that she cheats on people in the show per se, but she, as soon as she's done with one brother or one guy, will go straight to the next, and she's breaking a lot of hearts and things are getting really messy. And that's a perfect way to describe the show, is messy. But I will say it's entertaining. Season 1 in the beginning was a little rough. You know, it's always hard adjusting to, you know, Gen Z teens and a newish show talking, but once you get over that, I was into the drama. I will say Jeremiah, I am team Jeremiah, putting that out there. I'm a Jelly stan. I know most people are Bonrads, I think, but for me, I'm kind of over the moody, angsty teenage boy who's mean to people because he's got dark stuff going on. Yes, when you find out what actually is the thing that he's depressed about, you can understand, and it's sad. I won't say it because it's a spoiler, but at the same time, the way that this character was acting, I thought it was something serious, something criminal, something horrible he had done. He didn't want anyone to find out. So that when we found out what was actually making him depressed or dark or secretive, I was kind of underwhelmed. And then Belly was being super messy, but I felt like it was a pretty real depiction of teenage girls, given that I spent my whole high school career being friends with them and wanting to be one, not literally, but like you know, I felt like it was a good depiction of the highs and lows of being a teenager, a teenage girl. I thought they showed her relationships with her friend. Her friend's name is Taylor. I actually much prefer her in season 2. Her brother, I don't care for that much. And then you also get Jeremiah and Conrad's mother, and then Billy and her brother Steven's mother. You get their friendship and that dynamic, so I kind of like that as well. But overall, I feel like this show is a bit of a slow one. It's not really like plot based. It's definitely more character based and relationship based. But even then, I would say it's heavily more relationship based. I don't feel like there's a lot of character development in this show, and that's something that I don't like about it. I feel like there's so much time spent on the romance. There's a lot lacking and a lot to be desired when it comes to the character's development. I feel like the mother's friendship is stronger than any of the other friendships on this show. We're told that these characters are friends with each other, but I feel like we don't get that depiction as much as the romance, so that I struggle to believe that they're as close as they say they are. I will say the season 1 finale was pretty good. It was very emotional. There's like something very emotional that happens that I can't say because it's a spoiler, and it really has a ripple effect as to what's happening in season 2. And I thought that season 2 had a really strong start. Like, I was hooked, because season 1, I wasn't hooked on the show per se. Like, I wasn't always wanting to binge it or watch episodes. Me and my sister would just watch one here or there. But season 2, it started off really interesting. Like, the stakes were high. We were getting flashbacks as to what happened the year before the summer and all that had gone wrong after what had happened in the season 1 finale. And it was very interesting and emotional. I thought the emotional beats were great in season 2. But the reason I did not like season 2 is because the middle of it, or pretty much the rest of it except the finale episode, dragged like hell. You know, there is this one episode where this group of friends, so the two brothers, Billy and her brother, and then Cam Cameron, who's like her ex from season 1, who randomly is tagging along, and their cousin, who's also random, and I didn't feel like they needed to be there. There's like these 6 teenagers, they're all like going to a carnival, and that's the entire episode. It's just them at a carnival and then having flashbacks to a couple of summers ago when they went to another carnival. And I understand that it's supposed to be like character development or romance development or backstory, but it was boring as hell, and it went on for so long. And there were quite a few episodes where I was just like, move things along. What is happening? Why are we all just like sitting around talking? It's so random. I just felt like there was a massive pacing issue of season 2. I hate to say this because these seasons are only 8 episodes long anyway, but season 2 felt like it could have been 6. Or at least condense the length of the episode. These episodes are almost an hour long. Cut them down to 40 minutes. Trim the fat. There's a lot of stuff in this show that wastes time. But then again, I have to step off my soapbox and realize that the show probably is not made for me. Because I've spoken to other people, some women that I'm friends with, and they love this show. Maybe it's just not for me, but I can't stop watching it. As much as I don't like it and things bother me about it, what can I say? Because I'm Team Jeremiah all the way. Hey, I gotta see if he's gonna be endgame. Let me know if you've watched this show down below, if you're Team Conrad or Team Jeremiah. And tell me why I sound like I've just been reverted to my 12-year-old self. Anyway, I'm kind of torn on that show. I both love it and hate it at the same time. Hate's a strong word. Will I watch the next season? Well, yes. Okay, moving on to my next show. Second last, we have Heartstopper, another show that came out with the second season this year, but I also watched the first season this year, and then I rewatched both seasons with my sister because I thought it was so cute. The show is so wholesome. It's based on a comic book series. It's about this boy, Charlie, who is 14 and then turns 15. I need to stop watching so many shows about teenagers. I'm turning 24, goddamn. But he goes to a boys' private school in England where he gets sat next to this upperclassman in form class. I don't know if that's what it's called, and that accent was terrible. And his name is Nick, played by Kit Connor. And yeah, they start this little friendship. It starts budding. And also Charlie is like the only out gay kid in the school, so that's a little rough for him. You know, he gets teased and stuff, and he develops this friendship with Nick, and Nick starts to develop feelings for Charlie, and they start having this secret relationship, which Charlie doesn't feel so great about, but he's also young and he really likes Nick, so he goes along with it anyway. And Nick's being pretty respectful about it, considering the previous guy he had a secret relationship with, named Ben, treated him horribly. Okay, let me first talk about the plot. If there even is there one? Yeah, I mean, it's basically about these 2 schools. You know, there's an all boys private school and an all girls private school, because we have a group of friends, 3 girls, 3 boys, and they all go to like these separate schools, so their stories interlink and stuff. Because they had this other friend named, why am I so bad at remember characters' names? Elle, who's transgender. So after she transitioned, she moved from the all boys private school to the all girls private school, so she's making new friends there. She makes these 2 new friends who, once again, I'm forgetting, Darcy and Tara, and I love them. They're a lesbian couple. So we've got a lesbian couple, we've got a trans woman and a boy who get together, and then we've got a gay guy and a bi guy who get together, and it's really good representation for teenagers. And I've seen a lot of criticism from older people being like, this show's like too happy, this is not a realistic depiction of what it's like to be LGBTQ. And while I do understand what people are saying, they do show a little bit of like the teasing and the bullying and the struggles of coming out and all that kind of stuff in this show. But yes, it's not so serious, but at the same time, why is that a bad thing? I don't know about you, but I'm really tired of watching LGBTQ movies movies and TV shows that are always depressing, where people are always getting hate crimed and bashed, and I can't even say so many other words because such horrible things are shown in these films. And it's true to form, it's like true to history. You know, it's good to watch these things because it's the reality of the situation, and people deserve to learn that and should know that about how difficult time has been in the past for LGBTQ people and still is in some places in the world. But at the same time, are we not allowed joy, you know? And I think that's why I enjoyed this show, because it was, to me, it felt like one of the first wholesome LGBTQ shows I had ever watched, where it was just pure joy. And yes, they still showed the different struggles, and, you know, some of the characters have like an abusive home life, or, you know, are struggling with an eating disorder, and there's like a couple things that are touched on in the show that are a bit more serious. But at the end of the day, it's based on a comic book. It's focusing on characters that are 14, 15, 16 years old. It's for teenagers. I think it's nice to just have a joyful show. And I was giggling and kicking my feet. The show is just really, really cute. You know, it's not so much like a heavy plot per se. I mean, the first season is really Charlie and Nick having their secret relationship, and Nick trying to figure out if he's gay, if he's straight, what is he bi, who knows. And then after he comes out at the end of season 1, which isn't that much of a spoiler, season 2 is about what it's like having their relationship start to become public. And then you have the dynamic of Ben, who's Charlie's sort of ex, who's like still in the closet treating people like crap, and then Nick starting to navigate coming out to people, and then he has his douchey older brother. Oh my god, speaking of siblings, I love Charlie's sister. I forget what her name is, but she's hilarious. Oh, and Nick's mother is played by Olivia Colman. Hello, icon, legend, she is the moment. And I don't know, I just feel like this show did a really, really great job of showing the relationships between these teens in a way that is so appropriate. They were not sexualized. It was showing teens who weren't like the teens that we see in other shows like, you know, Euphoria or Skins, which is realistic. But I feel like when you watch a lot of these shows, or at least when I was growing up, you know, sometimes you think like, oh, as a teenager, should I be like drinking and doing drugs and partying and having sex? When it's like, that's not the experience of every teenager. And yes, there are times where, you know, they make out, things get a bit steamy, but they set their boundaries, they say they're not ready. Times when they drink a bit, and then they do show the consequences of that. You also get to have some teachers in the show that are actually really sweet. It's nice to see teachers depicted in a really great way, because there are some beautiful, kind teachers out there, at least that I've experienced. And I don't know, I just feel like this show is such a positive spin on a teen romance show, one that I've never seen before. It's able to speak about these topics that are difficult, like eating disorders or abusive family environments, or like divorced parents, or, you know, horrible people, homophobic, bullies, whatever. It's able to do all this stuff in a way that doesn't feel traumatic. I don't think this show necessarily would need to be one that would need a trigger warning. And sometimes it's nice to watch something like that. And I don't know, I just thought that the way that these characters communicated with each other was really beautiful. And I'm gushing. And they have some of like the comic book like animations in the show, and it's cute. It's cute. I've heard some people saying it's cringy. Just leave teenagers alone. Everybody's like, oh, why do teenagers have to grow up so fast? Meanwhile, you're watching a show like this about 14, 15, 16-year-olds, and you're like, oh my god, that's so cringy. Oh my god, that's so this, that's so that. Well, maybe you as a, however old you are, like me, 24, if you're 30, you're 40, whatever, it's usually just bitter gay men in their 30s, which just because you're a gay man in your 30s doesn't mean you're bitter. But the ones who are, like, maybe realize that the show isn't necessarily for you. You can watch the show and enjoy it, but why make fun of it? And I also feel like people get jealous. They're like, oh, you know, Heartstopper makes me feel horrible about my high school experience because I didn't get to have that. And it's like, well, yes, but think about all the people who can when you have this positive representation. And that's why I said it's also good to have that other media, because it shows you what like the people who came before you went through and what they fought for to give you the rights that you have today. I think both are important. All of those kind of movies that are, you know, dark and emotional and are period pieces set back in the 80s or whenever, or the 50s, those are important. But having these positive stuff like Heartstopper and Love Simon, the gushy stuff, that's important too, to normalize it and to, you know, have a positive future. Why am I getting so on my soapbox about this? I'm like, this is completely not where I thought this was gonna go. But I'm just thinking back about when the show was coming out and all the negative stuff that was coming out about it. I don't think the show is for everyone, but I think if you want a gushy, cute little teen romance LGBTQ thing that'll make you feel better for a couple hours, then just watch this. Anyway, after that positive gush, let's get into my final show that I want to discuss. American Horror Story Season 12 Delicate. Ooh, part 1 actually, because part 2 has not come out yet because of the writer's strike. They aired the first 5 episodes, and now there's a long break because they still have to film the second 5 episodes. I don't know, I don't get why they just didn't wait till they were all out. Probably networking issues. That's another thing, I didn't even touch on the writer's strike that happened this year. The writers and actors strike, which rightfully so. Like, studios need to stop paying people adequately. But yeah, it's caused a lot of shows to be delayed delayed. Stranger Things and Euphoria, the big two that I remember. So American Horror Story has been coming out now since, I want to say 2010, and it is an anthology series, so every season is different, and it's been pretty well known and spoken about how the seasons have kind of gone downhill in recent years. I would say probably after season 5 or 6 maybe is when I think season 6 was still okay, season 5 was okay, season 1 to 4 is kind of like the golden years, but ever since it's just been a bit rough. I would say, you know, season 7, 8, 10, and 11 were really bad, and I've watched all the seasons of American Horror Story, some even multiple times. The only season I never watched was season 11 because it just felt like an over-sexualized gay world of people who are being murdered because they're being sexually promiscuous. I don't know, it was a weird vibe. Like, I got a couple episodes in and I was like, not my vibe. But you know, season 12 I was curious about because it was starring Emma Roberts, and Emma Roberts is one of my favorite actresses. I know she's done some problematic stuff this year, she has apologized, but I've loved her ever since I was a kid, I must say. And this was kind of like the first season that I would say she was the star of. You know, she played some bigger roles in especially Coven and the 1980s one. This was like the first one where she was like the lead. And then of course they had Kim Kardashian, which was a huge twist because when have we seen Kim act seriously in anything? I mean, she was in that disaster movie, but she played herself. So I was very curious about that, but I also kind of felt like it was a marketing ploy to get more people to watch the show because for sure their ratings are down. And then they also had, what's her name? Cara Delevingne in this, which she hasn't acted in a while either, has she? But besides that, the lineup wasn't that good. I would say the only reason I was curious to watch it was because of Emma Roberts and Kim Kardashian for sure. But the concept of this season also didn't really make sense to me. When they were coming out with the promotional material and it was like spiders and pregnant women, I was like, okay, what is this about? Like, is it a horror thing to do with pregnancy? Because I feel like prior to this, the concepts of American Horror Story were pretty clear from the marketing. You know, you had Murder House, Asylum, Coven, Freak Show, Hotel. Like, they all had pretty clear ideas. I would say there were a few more obscure ones, like season 10 with the double feature was a little out there for me. But yeah, when I went into the show, I wasn't really knowing what to expect, and I was off the bat a little confused and disappointed. One, this season, at least the 5 episodes that we have, because that's another thing, I'm only judging it based on that, didn't feel scary to me. It felt like it was leaning more on the creepy side. I didn't feel the horror of American Horror Story. This season to me didn't really have much of a scare factor. It was either creepy or gross. Basically, the premise of it is this famous actress, I already forgot her name, Anna Alcott, played by Emma Roberts. She also has her manager played by Kim Kardashian. Her name is Siobhan. Yeah, so she's famous, a famous actress, and she's trying to get pregnant. She's going to like an IVF clinic, so like taking pills for that, getting things injected, but like things seem a bit off and creepy, and she notices someone is stalking her and they're sending her online messages, and she starts to like get sick and hallucinate, and then I don't know, things just get a bit weird. It's hard to explain, but it's, I guess I would say like the creepy factors of it, the main aspect of it is like implying that she has a demon baby. That's what I'm getting from it. And she's being stalked, and there's like some sort of cult situation going on that shows that this has happened before, where like people have like put demon babies in someone. I don't really know. I don't think they really know. But either way, I would say that this season is so slow. The episodes are also really short and not much happens in them. When I think about these 5 episodes, I could probably list a handful of things that have even happened. It's very slow. I would honestly say, and you're gonna be surprised, the saving grace for this season for me is Kim Kardashian. I know, but she is actually kind of funny. I feel like she's literally playing what she would be like if she was Kris Jenner, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. A lot of the stuff she says to me is really humorous, and whenever she's not on screen, I always find myself hoping she will be, excited when she is. So she's kind of the same grace for me. Emma Roberts has had some outstanding performances in the past, especially in her Coven season, but this season she's a little flat for me. I don't know. I'm scared to hesitate the season as a whole yet because we've only had half of it and we still need the second half, but I'm really hoping it picks up and it gets more intense and everything kind of ties together in the end, because so far I'm struggling. I mean, I kind of feel that way about American Horror Story in general, but I actually would love to make a video about American Horror Story. I'm not sure in what capacity I would. Maybe I would make a video on each season, or a whole video just talking about the whole show and ranking the seasons or something, but I definitely want to talk about it because I have a lot of opinions about it, and I'm also kind of surprised that it's still going on because it's been going on now for 12 years, 13 years? I don't know, it's been going on a while. So I don't know. Each time it comes out, it's more just a case of like, okay, well, I guess I'll watch it. So I'm like, oh my god, yay, I can't wait to watch it. I can't remember the last time I felt excited for a season of American Horror Story. Maybe Apocalypse, but then that turned out to be a massive disappointment because that was supposed to be a crossover of all the different stuff and it was a mess. But anyway, guys, that's it on the 10 shows that released new seasons in 2023 or came out in 2023 that I wanted to discuss with you guys. Overall, I'm feeling pretty positive about most of these shows. I mean, definitely love Heartstopper, Beef, Outer Banks, Ginny and Georgia, and Class of '07. And then I would say I'm kind of like slash It's okay for Abbott Elementary and You, and The Summer I Turned Pretty. And then, oh, I don't really know how to feel about this yet, is American Horror Story Delicate. And oh my god, I hate this, is The Idol. So only one show that I really didn't like on this list, so that's pretty good. I mean, I tend not to, unlike movies, like continue with the show if I don't like it. If I'm like an episode in and I'm not liking it, I just won't finish it. So overall, pretty positive. I hope to watch more shows next year. If you watched any of these, let me know your thoughts. Give me any recommendations you have. And yeah, guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe, turn on that bell, and check out my Patreon starting at $2.50 USD a month if you want to check out the TV shows that I rewatched / finished / watched for the first time in 2023. And also turn on to my Patrons for all your support. Anyway, guys, that's it for me in this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see my next one. And as always, I hope that you have a great day or night wherever you're in the world. Bye! Oh my god, I was talking really fast during this video. My vocal cords.